Reddit asks, what are your dating horror stories?
I dated this girl in high school. We were dating about 3 months when I went over super excited because I got accepted into the college I had wanted to attend since I was like 7. A couple weeks later she called me saying we needed to talk. When I go over, I find out she has been rejected from every college she applied to, save the community college nearby. Still no clue why. She was taking 2 language classes and had 3 app classes. Anyways, she said instead of going to a stupid community college, she and I were going to move to Florida. We lived in New England, to live with her grandmother, and we can try to apply for colleges down there. I said I wasn't moving to Florida after dating only a few months, and she said I had to choose her or my dream college. I chose college.
Same thing happened with my ex under different circumstances, and we dated much longer. Not going into detail, but let's say he gave me an unfair ultimatum which consisted of choosing between living with him in another state or breaking up. Some people just don't realize what they're asking of their significant other, and it hurts even more when it's self-centered. When they ask you to throw everything you've worked for away and leave loved ones behind at the expense of the relationship, on their terms, what does that tell you? Family was furious, and edged me to break up with him, and rightfully so. I'm thankful, because I would have went with him in a heartbeat. I'm young, and have so much to experience and build on before making such a commitment. We dated for 8 months.
Good call on your part. If she was gonna make you choose between her and college, things would have gotten way worse down the road.
Girl came up to me from behind, while I was wearing a jacket, and told me she liked my shirt. She seemed nice enough, just nervous, and honestly she was good looking, so I brushed it off. At the end of the day we exchanged numbers and got to talking later. 30 minutes later, we're texting and she asked me to be her boyfriend. I'm like sure totally. But then it got real bad. She starts sending me videos of her singing. She was not a good singer. After each video she'd ask me, do you think I'm cute, do you like it, etc. I sort of awkwardly just passively nodded along and hoped to chalk it up to nerves. Then with the video she started to ask me, do you love me? Multiple times. It was getting bad, so I decided to jump ship, and break off the relationship that I had only just started less than an hour ago. She took it semi-decently. The next day I found out she'd been bouncing around trying to date really any guy who would reciprocate. After her craziness got around enough, no one would. So she moved away and jumped in front of a car. She didn't die though, she's just crazy. It was wild.
This may not be considered a horror story, but I am telling it anyways because it was horrifying to me. LOL. I met a guy online and we chatted for almost a month before we actually went on our first date. We hit it off immediately and had a lot in common. We laughed a lot and the whole date went really well. Until the end of the night. You know that end of the night when it's a bit awkward, for some, and you are waiting for that end of night kiss or sort of goodbye. I was sitting in the passenger seat in front of my car and we both kind of awkwardly leaned in and we went the same way, so it was going to be a miss. Hard to explain. Anyways, we both paused and tried to adjust our positions and he panicked, went and grabbed me around the neck like I was his little brother and says, "Come here, you," and proceeds to noogie me. He gave me a noogie. Not for long, it hurt slightly and my hair ended up a freaking mess. He let go. I stared blankly at the front of the car, he laughed awkwardly, I laughed awkwardly and got out of the car. Neither of us ever spoke to each other again. It's been years and my friends and I laugh about it now. He was harmless, he just panicked. I had a Tinder date where he showed up an hour late and drunk. He also had a lot more facial features and was a lot older than I thought. He tried to show me his shitty pop-punk band and get me to go home with him. No, just no. It was awful. Another time I was on a first date to the zoo, Tinder, and I go in the petting zoo. The dude kinda stands outside looking nervous. I ask why he want pet goats with me and he says he always gets attacked. I convince him to come inside and no joke, every goat is attacking him within minutes. I felt so had. He told me to run while these goats are going ham on him. It was awkward for the rest of the day.
This one played Goat Simulator in excess. The goats always know.
I went to a small engineering college and there were like 9 girls in my program, one of which was extremely hot and very cool. I was neither, but can be funny, and I use that to my advantage. Over the course of 6 months I slowly woo her to the point where I am fairly confident that she will say yes upon asking her out. This was in the 90s, by the way, when you still had to manually ask girls out. A few more weeks go by and I finally ask her out and she accepts. I am completely smitten with this girl. I pick her up at her sorority house, which is an awkward deal if you have never done it before because a dozen girls answer the door to check you out. I take her to the best restaurant I can find/afford, and so far everything is going great. I order a bowl of the soup of the day and an entree. She orders something inconsequential to the story. As you can guess, the soup du jour is black bean soup. The waiter is this much more attractive than me, late 20s guy who is obviously scoping my date and subtly flirting with her, so my machismo is activated, so much so that when said waiter suggests I order the cup of soup versus the bowl, as their bowls are very large, I take it as a shot across the bow of my fragile masculinity and insist that I can handle the bowl. The bowl is delivered and it's more of a tureen. You easily could have fed a family 4 with leftovers, but now my dumbass has to not only finish it, but do so acting like it's normal to eat a gallon of soup as I made a big deal of it. I eat the soup and I am already Thanksgiving stuffed when they bring out my entree, which I obvious have to eat as well or admit to handsome waiter and date that I'm an idiot with such a fragile ego that I can't take an obvious suggestion. Despite my obvious physical discomfort, my date cannot seem to tell that I am so uncomfortable that I may explode from either end at any instant. Furthermore, as I get up to use the bathroom, my date asks if we can stop by her sorority house on the way to our movie, so she can pick up a sweater for the cold theater. Despite the obvious, I say, no problem, and we get up to leave. As I am walking to the car, I get what feels like a knife to my beltline, followed by a gurgling noise as 8 pounds of shit are transferred from my intestines to my colon. I'm still not worried though, as we drive to her place, as it's like 5 minutes to the theater. We get to her sorority house and she asks if I need to come inside for anything. I would like to think she wanted to fool around, but I think she has now picked up on my situation, probably from my profuse sweating and silence. No, I'm fine. And she heads inside to get her coat and do God knows what else, cause she's in there for what feels like an hour, then another sharp pain, another gurgle. I have now sweat, literally through my clothes as I realize I have to shit, and I have to shit now. I get up and run to the front door, which isn't helping my situation any, as I desperately scramble to fling open the front door to the sorority house, locked of course. It's too late. I run around the side of the house, drop true, and proceed to shit my brains out, pressing my back hard against the side of the building in an attempt to keep from contaminating myself. I was not successful. Though I immediately felt physically better, as I put myself back together I realize, in sheer terror, that both my shoes and lower parts of my pants have been splattered. I start putting together a plan of action: run to the car, run home, explain later, when as I am heading to my car I spot my date, sitting patiently in the passenger seat. Somehow on the spot I come up with, what I thought at the time, was a brilliant excuse, that I also have to stop by my house to change. As I stepped in dog shit while relieving myself on the side of her sorority house, she spared me from having to explain why I could not wait to use the bathroom at the theater. I assumed she was distracted by the horrible odor in the car, but more likely she knew the truth. Whatever the case, the angel did not make me elaborate on anything, and we had a great time the rest of the evening.
Matched with a woman online, who had a kid. This particular weekend, kid was going to be with the dad. She asked me to come over, hang out. She mentioned she wanted to smoke, so I brought a J. Came over and her house was decent. She had a big sectional couch, and she sat right next to me. Fired up the J, pass it to her and she hits it a few times and gives it back. I hit it as well, and offer it to her, and she says no thanks. Okay, no biggie, I'll put it out. She gets up after a minute and goes into the other room. When she comes back, she is sitting on the other side of the couch, and not talking at all. It was then that I noticed that she has something in her hand, and she has a death grip on it. I'm talking white knuckles. I ask her if she is okay, and she says the voices in my head are telling me to stab you, and at this point I notice what she is holding is a pencil. I made some kind of awkward laugh, then asked to use her bathroom, got up and saw that the garage door was open. Didn't even hesitate, right out the garage,
This was one of the first dates I ever went on. I knew him a bit through college and friends. He was out at a student night and we hit it off and had a bit of a kiss. He had a room in a shared house in the center of town and he invited me over later that week. I arrived there, expecting to be going out on a date or for a drink or whatever, but there were loads of his friends there in his room. Bit weird, but I knew them a bit and they were a nice crowd. I thought we'd be heading off on our own shortly. Nope. My date totally ignored me like I wasn't there. One of the girls said to him, "Hey, date's name, look who's here." He said oh hi and nodded, then went back to chatting, not including me at all. I sat awkwardly making small talk with some of the girls, giving him curious looks and trying to catch his eye. Nothing. Everyone decided to go to someone else's house to watch a film, so I trailed along with them, him striding off in front and me near the back, still making small talk with some of the girls who I didn't really know. I was too green and awkward to realize I should have bounced then. Sat through a film at a relative stranger's house while he continued to ignore me. Awkwardly said bye to everyone after the film had finished, still hoping he might acknowledge me and walk me to the bus stop at least. Nope. So I had a bit of a scary walk to the bus stop through town alone at night, feeling pretty puzzled and embarrassed. Saw him around college afterwards and he was always standoffish. Cool, you don't like me after all then, I guess. A year or two later I was out at a club and he was there. He was like, "Oh, I knew you'd be here." And gave me a really weird, gushing over the top apology about how he treated me, tried to hug me repeatedly and buy me an apology drink, which I politely refused. He literally followed me around and eventually stood on his own, gazing at me lovingly at the edge of the dance floor for ages while I danced with my friends. His hands were cupping his face while he stared up at me with a little indulgent smile, like I was the loveliest thing he'd ever seen. To the point where it was quite creepy. My friends were all like, "Who is that guy and why is he being so weird?" Not a damned clue. TLDR, got invited out by a guy expecting to go out on a date but was greeted by a house full of his mates while he completely blanked me, leaving me humiliated. Years later bumped into him at a club and he followed me round, gazing at me like I was an angel from heaven.
Got stuck on a dud of a blind double date, and fell asleep on the couch. The boys were roommates. Woke up to my date sitting next to me on the couch masturbating while intently staring at me. I noped the fuck out and locked myself in the bathroom for the rest of the night.